today. It is my absolute pleasure to host this webinar, which is featuring Canada Study Permit Processing and Travel Ban. Today is an update for India. So thank you again for joining us. And we are going to now walk you through some details about this webinar. So moving into our agenda, it is my absolute pleasure to announce who our panelists are for today. So we have Alina Balboa kicking us off this morning, this afternoon, this evening. Alina is the first Secretary of Migration for the High Commission of Canada. So Alina will be kicking us off with an update on travel restrictions and study permit processing. We'll then move into her Q&A. So like I mentioned, make sure you're getting those Q&A questions in early. We will have that first Q&A period in about half an hour. And then following Alina, we'll get to hear from ApplyBoard's own CMO and co-founder, Mehdi Basiri, who will be talking through some study permit trends. Following Mehdi's presentation, we'll have another Q&A, and that will close out our session. I will also mention, due to security reasons, Alina is not able to share her camera today, so you will get to hear her wonderful voice walking us through her portion of today's webinar presentation. So with that, Alina, it's over to you to speak to travel restrictions and study permit processing.
Thanks so much, Amy. Okay, so good afternoon to everyone from New Delhi. Good morning to those who are in Canada. Thank you very much to ApplyBoard for organizing this event, and thank you for the audience for tuning in. So as Amy mentioned, my name is Alina Balboa. I am the Students and Workers Unit Manager here at the High Commission of Canada in New Delhi, India, also for Secretary of Migration. In today's presentation, I will share with you the latest updates on travel restrictions, exemptions, and study permit processing updates. The contents of this webinar are valid as of today. So for the most current information on IRCC processes and travel restrictions to Canada, please visit www.canada.ca/immigration. Links to our social media pages will be shared with you at the end of the presentation, and I strongly recommend that you scan the QR codes being provided, as they will provide you with more important information. To protect Canadians from the outbreak of COVID-19, the Government of Canada implemented travel restrictions that limit travel to Canada. So since November 21, 2020, if you are flying to Canada as your final destination, you must use the ArriveCAN app to submit your travel and contact information, your quarantine plan details, and your COVID-19 symptom self-assessments. There are 4 mandatory COVID-19 testing requirements for those departing from India. You must provide one of the accepted types of tests and not an antigen test, and keep proof of those test results for the 14-day period that begins on the day you enter Canada. The first test happens before you even get on your flight. All travelers 5 years of age or older, regardless of citizenship, must provide proof of a negative COVID-19 molecular test result. Even if you've already received the vaccine, you must still provide a valid test result. It does not exempt you from this requirement. You must take the test within 72 hours of your scheduled departure time of your flight. Under the current direct flight ban to Canada, so there are no direct flights that will fly between India and Canada up until September 21st. Those choosing to transit to travel to Canada by transiting through a third country, you will be required to take a COVID-19 molecular test in that transit country before you would be permitted to board your flight to Canada. Like your first test, this test must be taken within 72 hours of the departure of your flight. Upon arrival in Canada, you may be required to undergo a third COVID-19 molecular test, and travelers will also be required to reserve a government-authorized hotel for 3 nights prior to departure in Canada. You'll stay in this hotel while waiting results of your second COVID-19 test. Note that the cost of the hotel is your responsibility, and it includes food, security, transportation, and infection prevention and control measures. You'll need to present proof of having reserved and prepaid your accommodation through the ArriveCAN app. Travelers will still be required to complete the remainder of their mandatory 14-day quarantine after their mandatory hotel stopover. Your 4th test will occur on day 8 of your quarantine period. You'll receive instructions on how to do this test when you arrive at the port of entry. As of July 5th, certain exemptions have been introduced for fully vaccinated travelers. So those who meet the requirements may be exempt from quarantine, hotel stopover, and day 8 testing requirements. Pre-entry arrival tests are still required. As of September 7, all foreign nationals who qualify for the fully vaccinated traveler exemption will be permitted to travel to Canada for discretionary travel. All travelers must use the ArriveCan app to enter proof of vaccination, quarantine, and travel information. You may qualify for certain exemptions to quarantine and testing requirements if you're eligible to enter Canada, if you're asymptomatic, if you meet the Governments of Canada requirements of fully vaccinated travelers, and you meet all other entry requirements, including entering your information in the ArriveCan app before arrival. To be considered fully vaccinated, you must have received a full series of an accepted COVID-19 vaccine or a combination of accepted vaccines. You should have also received your last dose at least 14 days prior to the day you enter Canada. Last but not least, you also need to upload your proof of vaccination in the ArriveCan app. Note that if you fail to do that last bit, despite actually being fully vaccinated, you will not meet this eligibility requirement for exemption as a fully vaccinated traveler. So that last portion of entering all of your information in the ArriveCan app is really, really important. So there's 4 accepted vaccines, so the Pfizer-BioNTech, the Moderna COVID-19, AstraZeneca and Covishield, and Janssen. Vaccines not currently accepted for fully vaccinated status in Canada include Bharat Biotech, Sputnik, Sinovac, etc. So despite the relaxation of certain measures for vaccinated travelers, please remember that direct flights from India to Canada remain suspended until September 21st. For international students, only those who are destined to designated learning institutions with a COVID-19 readiness plan approved by the respective provincial or territorial governments may enter Canada. This, first and foremost, protects the health and safety of all students and the surrounding communities. Additionally, these plans describe how DLIs will manage the mandatory 14-day quarantine period for international students, including arrangements for transportation to the student's quarantine location. So I often get the question of whether or not a student needs to follow the quarantine plans that DLIs have set for them. And the answer to this is yes. If your DLI has specified a quarantine plan for their international students, the students must follow this, as this is likely part of the COVID-19 readiness plan that has been approved for that school. These plans also provide information and support to international students about how they can get items they need for quarantine, like food and medication, health insurance, and how to remain healthy while in Canada. The list of approved DLIs is posted on the IRCC's webpage, and it's updated every 2 weeks as provinces and territories approve additional schools. This travel restriction affects all international students, regardless of where they're traveling from or when their study permit was approved. Students should not make any travel plans until they've met all requirements and received all necessary authorizations. So this essentially means that you've already received your passport with visa attached before you start making travel plans. Additionally, students should not travel more than 4 weeks in advance of the start of your classes. If you exceed this limit, you may be refused entry into Canada and return to your country of residence at your own expense. So please remember that the airline that you use to travel to Canada and Cbsa always have the final decision in whether you'll be allowed to board or enter Canada. We can only provide you with guidance based on the information that you provide to us. So one of the mistakes travelers make is assuming that they can accompany their family member who is traveling on either a work permit, study permit, or visitor visa to Canada. Most family members will require travel authorization from IRCC. So only those who meet travel exemptions in their own right will be allowed to accompany their family member, such as a minor child with a study permit who will be attending school in Canada. A minor child without a study permit will require a travel authorization from IRCC. If you're a parent and you want to accompany your child to school in Canada, you can do this, provided that they're entering primary school or high school. Those attending college or university are expected to settle on their own unless they have a physical or mental disability preventing them from doing so. You'll still need a visa in your own right, as well as travel authorization from IRCC. So authorization letters are only granted for temporary residents traveling with or to join their immediate family member in Canada and not for any other reason. So you shouldn't make travel plans until this travel authorization is received. Depending on your circumstances, this could take several weeks before you receive a decision on your travel authorization request. This is in addition to the processing times for the visa itself. So before traveling, ensure that you have all the necessary documents to avoid issues in boarding your flight at the port and at the port of entry. To board your flight, you'll need to ensure that you have the following documents with you: your flight ticket, your valid passport, your valid visa, your port of entry letter, your letter of acceptance reflecting the start date of your classes, and your valid COVID-19 molecular test results. In addition to the items I've just listed, I strongly recommend that students should also have the following documents for Cbsa at the port of entry. So for example, your quarantine plan details. You will still need a quarantine plan in case you test positive on arrival or Cbsa determines that you actually don't meet the exemptions for quarantine. Proof of funds to cover your tuition, living expenses, and transportation costs. Your language test results. And if your program has already started, which is the case for a lot of students lately, evidence that you've actually attended a previous semester or however many semesters you've already completed online. So COVID-19 not only changed the way we travel, but also the way we process applications. There have been some impacts on processing as a result of the pandemic, such as online applications are the only types of applications accepted at this time. So this means you can apply for any type of visa, such as student, visitor, or worker online. However, priority will be given to those applicants who meet travel restriction exemptions. Mandatory online application is actually a good consequence of the pandemic because this allows us to continually process applications across our network through work sharing of this caseload until our operations normalize. When applying online, ensure that your name and date of birth are exactly as shown in your passport. We're seeing a lot of cases where, for example, a name is incorrectly entered in the biometrics instruction letter, and this prevents the student from submitting their biometrics. These errors take time to correct, and they will delay processing. On the IRCC website, published processing times are no longer accurate since we're prioritizing applications for people who are exempt from travel restrictions. We're unable to provide specific processing timelines and can't offer a response to any questions on the turnaround or processing of applications at this time. We will contact applicants only when there's an update regarding that application, so please be patient. We encourage applicants to monitor their online accounts, watch our website for updates, and follow us on social media for updated information. IRCC Delhi also continues to operate at a limited capacity as necessitated by the pandemic. As such, please expect delays in responding to your inquiries. If you need to submit a document or new information, use your IRCC Secure account to send it to us because this information will then directly populate into your online application. Additionally, please only send one inquiry at a time and wait for a response. Sending the same inquiry multiple times will only cause further delays. Other contributing factors include missing documents and incomplete applications. Panel physicians are now booking appointments for Upfront Medicals. If you submitted an online application without an Upfront Medical, you need to wait for an Immigration Medical Examination form, also known as an IME, to book your appointment. This means that it may take longer for you to complete your medical exam or to obtain supporting documents you need for your application. However, you must submit the missing documents as soon as possible because we will not be able to finalize your application otherwise. If submitting an application with missing documents, I strongly recommend you provide an accompanying letter indicating what is missing and when you intend to submit them. For certain key items like language test results, transcripts, diplomas, or degree certificates, you should not submit your application until you have these documents, as your application might be refused. And as you're likely aware, we've taken a phased approach to providing services at the VACs. After being closed for an extended period of time due to the pandemic, a lot has changed because we take the health and welfare of our clients and staff very seriously. So we ask you to please be cautious, not to crowd around the VACs, and come to your biometrics appointments alone. So in the next slide, we'll look at more details on some of the changes at the VAC. So as you know, VACs have slowly resumed operations. As of July 19, VAC passport submission web form went online, enabling all holders of passport request letters to submit their passports. Please note that our VAC offices do not accept in-person passport transmission. You should also refrain from sending your passport directly to the High Commission. Otherwise, we will return it to you at a later date without a visa. So please be patient and kindly wait for your courier service booking to be confirmed. Also, please note that all visa applicants who hold biometrics instruction letters may book a biometrics appointment at a VAC in India using the online booking tool on the VFS Global website. Biometrics appointments are free. Given the current pandemic delays, you may use expired BILs to book a biometrics appointment at this time. When using the VAC online booking tool, a visa applicant holding a BIL may book only one appointment. Attempts to book additional appointments are not permitted and delay processing requests for other applicants. Please scan the VAC QR code on your screen, and many of your questions will hopefully be answered through there. Once scanned, the document will continue to be updated on your phone if and when IRCC updates that information. There's no need to continually scan this QR code again. So I'm sure there's a number of you to whom this study permit process is very new. So let's go over some of the basics. For your submission to be considered an actual application, but not necessarily complete, you need to submit upfront the following documents. So number one, the application forms. We don't have an application unless you've submitted all the required forms. There's the application for a study permit and the family information form. And if you're less than 17 years of age, you also need to submit a completed custodian declaration to indicate who will be caring for you when you're in Canada. And if you decide to use the help of anyone with your visa application, you should also declare this by submitting a use of rep form. Number two is fees. Lately, we've been seeing a number of applications missing fees, whether it's the processing fee or the biometrics fee. You need to submit both fees up front. This means a fee receipt for a total of 235 Canadian dollars. 3 and 4 are the passport photos and a copy of your passport. Number 5 is a letter of offer of acceptance from a DLI in Canada. So this should usually be an unconditional LOA. However, we will accept a conditional LOA if you can also demonstrate, as in provide evidence, that you meet the conditions in your application. You shouldn't submit your application until you've evidence to demonstrate that you meet the conditions as stated on your LOA. While this lists the basic documents for an application to be considered, you should aim to provide all necessary supporting documents as well, which we'll discuss in the next slide. So this slide reflects the documents you need for your eligibility assessment. So this covers both the SDS and non-SDS stream. For SDS, you need a valid LOA, Ielts test results demonstrating 6.0 in each band, a receipt or documentation that tuition has been paid for the first year, including all scholarships and grants, a receipt for GIC for 10,000 Canadian dollars. This covers your living expenses for your first year, your most recent school transcripts, and if you're a Quebec-bound student, a CAQ. For the non-SDS stream, there's a few differences, not many. So for example, in addition to Ielts, we'll also accept TOEFL and PTE test results. No online language test results will be accepted. And instead of a GIC and paying for a full year tuition, you need to show liquid funds to pay for tuition, living expenses, and transportation for the first year of school, plus an explanation and evidence of how you intend to pay for all of the remaining subsequent years of school without relying on working in Canada. Additionally, I strongly recommend that you submit a statement of purpose to explain why you've chosen that program of study, why you've chosen Canada, and to explain your financial plan to pay for all of your years of study. Note that if you're unable to submit a required document, such as an upfront medical, your application will be moved to the non-SDS stream. I strongly recommend that you only submit your application once you have all of the documents required for your eligibility assessment. failure to provide a required document may result in the refusal of your application. In the next 2 slides, I want to provide you with information about medical examinations and tuberculosis. We sometimes find that applicants are reluctant to complete their medicals because of fear of refusal. So let me allay some of those fears now. All permanent resident applicants and temporary resident applicants, so that includes study permit applicants, who will be staying in Canada for more than 6 months require a medical exam. Only designated panel physicians are able to conduct your immigration medical exam. And you can find a list of those physicians on our website. So note that the panel physician doesn't make any decisions on your medical exam. They basically conduct the tests and send those results to us, and we have our own staff who assess those results and make an assessment. If there's a problem with your medical, we will contact you in writing. So please be patient while we assess your medical exam through your application process. So when can you take your exam? You have 2 options. You can either do it before you submit your application, and this is called an upfront medical. To arrange this, all you need to do is contact a panel physician directly to make an appointment. And honestly, this is what I recommend everybody to do to speed up the processing of your application, is to do an upfront medical with all of your applications. Your other option is to wait until after you submitted your application. So if you choose this route, you must wait for IRCC to send you instructions to be able to do your medical exam. Once you receive these instructions, you'll have 30 days to comply with them, and then failure to do so may result in a refusal of your application. So here's a little bit of what you can expect during your exam. So you'll be asked to complete your medical history questionnaire, which will ask you about previous or existing medical conditions. We'll also ask you about any medications you might be taking. And then there's the physical examination with the doctor and medical clinic staff who will, conduct things like weighing you, measuring your height, checking your hearing, your vision, taking your blood pressure, etc. You have the right to a chaperone at any time during your medical exam, and you can ask the medical clinic to have a staff member in the room or stop the exam at any time to ask questions about what the doctor is doing. You can also stop the exam at any time and ask for a chaperone, even if you've refused one at the beginning of the exam. And of course, if you have any questions or feel uncomfortable with any part of the exam, please ask the panel physician to stop and tell them about your concerns. So you should also note the following. Chest x-rays are mandatory for all applicants 11 years of age or older. And urine and blood test is mandatory for all applicants aged 15 and older. The blood test is to check for HIV, syphilis, kidney, and liver functions. When you arrive, the panel physician or clinic staff will ask you for identification to confirm your identity. If you're referred for an x-ray or other tests, you may be asked to present your identification again when you go for those other tests. And of course, your photo will also be taken for our records. After your exam is done, the panel physician will send the results electronically to IRCC, and this usually takes between 2 to 3 days before it gets recorded in your immigration file. But note that it could go up to 10 days, so please be patient. And in case additional tests are required, we will let you know about them. During the medical exam, you'll be tested for tuberculosis or TB. If the doctor finds signs of tuberculosis, you may be asked to do additional tests to determine if your TB is old and inactive or if it's still active. We usually refer to this as medical furtherance. In most cases of TB, TB is old and inactive, and your medical can be finalized immediately. In a very, very small percentage of patients, TB can be active. And in those cases, it's important to note that anyone can get TB because it's transmitted through the air when that infected person coughs, speaks, laughs, or sneezes. And since TB is contagious, it's important that you get treated before you travel. So if you have TB, you will not be barred from going to Canada. However, you will need to be fully treated before you actually are able to travel. And TB can be treated, but it's really important to complete the full treatment. So if you don't complete the full treatment, you can develop a form of TB that's more difficult to treat, and you can infect the people around you, and especially those that you love. You'll be given the opportunity to go through a drug regimen to clear yourself of active TB before your medical assessment is finalized. So just because you've been detected with active TB, it doesn't mean a refusal right away. We will give you the option to do this drug regimen to clear yourself of the active TB before we assess your medicals. This is going to be part of the medical furtherance instructions that will be provided to you in writing. So note that you need to follow these instructions as soon as possible, or you may deem medically inadmissible or refused for non-compliance. And since we're on the subject of medicals, it's extremely important for you to know that your medicals must be valid at the time of travel. So for your knowledge, all medicals are only valid for 1 year from the date of your medical assessment, which is the date your IME is assessed in our system. You can check for this IME assessment date in your IRCC Secure account. This means that if more than 1 year has elapsed, you must complete a new medical if you have not yet traveled to Canada, and even though you already have a visa. Note that even though you have a valid visa, it will be deactivated if your meds are expired. This only applies to students who have not yet used their visa to travel to Canada. If you already used your visa and have returned to India for a short vacation in between semesters, you do not need a new medical to travel back. So let's go over the process of what you need to do. So check the original medical form and look at the date of when you completed your medical exam. If more than 1 year has elapsed or will elapse by the time you're ready to travel, you need a new medical. To start, you need to contact your local panel physician and book an appointment for an upfront medical exam. You'll receive a document entitled e-medical and has the following information. So it has a UMI barcode, your photo, your personal details, and the date of your visit. You don't need to send this document to IRCC because the panel physician will send it to us electronically. Now, this is really important because we get a lot of questions about this. You will never see this medical update in your online secure account because your application is officially closed. However, we will associate the medical to your client profile in the background. Once this is done, we will then reactivate your visa. Be advised that this process can take up to 4 weeks, so you should not travel until at least 4 weeks after your new medical was completed and when you receive notification from IRCC that your visa has been reactivated. So many of you still have questions about working in Canada and how the current changes may affect your opportunity to be employed. So why is the Pgwp important for so many students? So work experience provides a better opportunity to gain the language skills and work experience required to apply for permanent resident status in Canada. In addition, Canada has some of the highest salaries for workers. And furthermore, persons with Canadian work experience are often able to demonstrate they have the skills, knowledge, and critical thinking required to do the job. It's worth noting that you can obtain up to a 3-year Pgwp, but this all depends on the length of your eligible studies. So IRCC has introduced additional measures to provide maximum flexibility for students to obtain their Pgwp. So first of all, you need to ensure that you meet all of the usual Pgwp requirements. So please check our website to ensure that the program in which you're enrolled makes you eligible for that Pgwp. And you can study your program online and outside of Canada, and all of that time spent on studies will count towards your Pgwp up until December 31st, 2021. So the important thing to note is that you need to have applied for your study permit before you actually start studying for that time to count towards your Pgwp. So this section applies to students already in Canada. Essentially, if a student switched to part-time studies or had to take a break in studies, so for example, the spring semester may have been canceled due to the pandemic, they may still continue to work on and off campus, provided that they were previously a full-time student and already authorized to work on and off campus pre-pandemic. For off-campus work, the maximum limit is still 20 hours per week during the academic session and full-time during regular academic breaks. It's really important to note that school closures, part-time studies, and semester cancellation due to COVID-19 do not count as regularly scheduled academic breaks. So there's a lot of fraud activities and misinformation related to immigration applications, and I strongly advise everybody to download the ICCRC app. This app allows you to easily verify or find authorized immigration consultants. So education recruiters are quite prevalent in India, and their duties include providing prospective students with information about applying to DLIs in Canada, guiding them through the DLI application process, collecting admission documents, and essentially recruiting students for the schools they represent. It's important to note that education recruiters or agents are not authorized representatives and should not provide students with immigration advice or submit applications on their behalf. They can only do administrative functions, and many agents used by DLIs are for the recruitment process and not necessarily immigration matters. So for students, we warn them to be alert for fraud. And here are some of the ways they can do this. So protecting themselves, to never share information with unauthorized strangers, to watch out for fraudulent websites and scams. There are websites claiming to be official government of Canada's sites, and they do this to trick people into paying them money. Note that application processing fees are fixed and there are no additional charges. There's email scams. IRCC will never send you an email from a private address. Emails may also appear to be coming from our office, but are actually coming from a scammer. Learn how to expand the headings of email addresses you receive to find out who is the actual sender. And then there's telephone scams. IRCC will never ask you for any sort of payment by telephone. All fees must be paid online through our website. And then there's unauthorized agents. So authorized agents include members of law societies in Canada, members of the Chambre de Notaire in Quebec, and members of ICCRC, a regulatory body for immigration consultants in Canada. An authorized rep can provide you with valuable tips to avoid paying too much money for an immigration service, as well as what you can expect. And any paid rep must be authorized. Note that you can also use unpaid reps who could be family members or a trusted friend. And any person assisting you, paid or not paid, must be declared on your application and specifically on the use of rep form. So if you need to contact us regarding your application, please only use the IRCC web form. If you want to attach additional information to your application, send us a request via the web form and we'll create a line in your online account to which you can upload the document yourself. This will require 5 business days before you can do this, so please be patient. There's no need to send us your inquiry or documents in multiple ways because this will just slow down the overall processing. And if you want to verify if a visa is valid or report fraud, please contact the fraud email address on your screen. If you're reporting fraud in India, you should also report it to the local police. The other email addresses listed were covered in the presentation, so please only send a message to the IRCC COVID travel exemption box if you meet the travel exemption and you require a travel authorization letter. So for more information, here's the many ways you can connect with us. We have the IRCC website, the High Commission website, our social media on Facebook and Twitter, and there's also some QR codes to provide you with information because there's a lot to cover. If you need assistance in submitting an online application, again, please scan the QR code. This provides you with a step-by-step guide on how to apply online. So thank you again for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer any questions the audience might have.
Thanks, Alina. That was a really, really thorough presentation. Thank you so much for all of those details. Thank you, everyone, for the questions that you have sent to us. We've received a lot of questions, Alina, so I've summarized them as best we can, and hopefully we can get through the majority of the questions in about the next 12 to 15 minutes. So the first one that we have for you, you were chatting through about students not making travel plans until everything is in place, and if they do arrive before the 4-week mark, before their studies start, that they can be denied entry by Cbsa, the Canadian Border Services Agency. Assuming everything is in place, study permits, their quarantine plan, aside from that 4-week max travel limit, are there any other reasons why Cbsa may deny entry? You mentioned the medical. Anything else?
So I see all of those reports from Cbsa. Actually, they come across my desk, and the most common is that the student is missing documents when they arrive, either to board their flight or when they've arrived at the port of entry. So Cbsa, for example, is asking for their LOA to show that their classes have actually started or will be starting soon. And what the student is providing is an outdated LOA that's no longer valid. Or they've been asked, how are you going to pay for your stay in Canada? And they've forgotten their tuition fee payment receipts or their GIC, or they can't locate, they forgot them, they didn't bring them, they can't access them. So these are usually the most common reasons why persons are being denied entry or refused to board on their planes. Thank you.
Understood. No, thank you. To that point, you mentioned the LOA. It does have a date of validity. So what happens if a student has started their studies online, they've completed 1 to 2 semesters? I'm assuming that means the LOA technically has expired, but now they're trying to apply for their visa 6 to 8 months after their course has already started. Are there concerns there about them being able to enter Canada because technically that LOA is for the year previous?
Great question. So the fact that the student has already completed a semester or 2 semesters of schooling provide evidence that you've actually been studying all this time, because that in conjunction with your initial LOA is evidence that you've got an actual program to complete. You're maybe halfway through it already. This actually adds to as a positive factor to you being a bona fide student. So please provide this evidence.
Okay, perfect. And I know in one of those previous slides, you included the list of all the documents, all the details that are required to not be denied entry. So I encourage anyone who's rewatching this presentation to take a look at that list and make sure you are helping your students prepare with all the documents they need and making sure they're checking those boxes and not leaving anything to chance, because this is definitely a process. If we've learned anything you want to prepare for, you want to make sure everything is ready to go before you're trying to get into Canada. Perfect. Thanks, Alina. According to some of our attendees on the line today, those biometrics appointments you were speaking about are hard to come by. Any suggestions for how to obtain one of these? You mentioned they're free, which is great. But as a second part to that question, when should that process be started? When should the biometric appointment be made to further be able to get that successful study permit?
So number one, you won't be able to get your biometrics instruction letter until after you've submitted your application. So once you've submitted your application and your fees are logged into the system, so you'll also need to make sure you paid the biometrics fee, you'll get the BIL, the biometrics instruction letter, a 3-year IRCC online secure account automatically within 24 hours of applying. And you'll need this BIL to apply for your appointment using the online booking system in the VFS website. So the VFS is actually making additional appointments for students specifically to help students get to their classes for fall semester. So when they do see that it's students applying for biometrics, they've already reserved earlier appointments for them. So for example, those who are applying for visitor visas, for example, are not as prioritized as students. So they're sort of going in queue and they're getting the next available appointment like everybody else. But then the reserve lot of earlier appointments are there available for students. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Regarding kind of those same visa timelines and processing timelines, there are attendees asking us about visa rejection rates for really strong Ielts scores. So not the rate themselves, but the rates seem high. When the universities have already accepted the student, but they're being rejected on grounds of poor Ielts scores, even though they're deemed high by the school. Do you have any comments on that? Any insight into what might be happening there?
So if it's specific to Ielts scores, we won't refuse based on Ielts scores if every band is at a 6.0. And that's standard and that's quite average. It's not a high Ielts score, it's a pretty average Ielts score. So if it's being refused, it's usually refused for other things and not necessarily Ielts.